What's up, everyone? John Manson of Sea Red back again with another update, and going to be talking about Liberty Football Training Camp. It's gotten started officially. Liberty Training Camp is underway. Players reported on Tuesday. First practice was Wednesday afternoon. They had their second practice on Thursday, and as this is being published, practice number 3 on Friday. And obviously, make sure you're subscribe to Seer Red here on YouTube, like and share our videos, comment as well so other Liberty fans and those interested in Liberty football can see this content. Also, make sure you're checking SeerRed.com every day. Updates coming hot and heavy throughout training camp. Also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at a Seer Red. That's where you can find us. So make sure you're tuned in to all those places where you consume social media and content, and we're going to have a lot of content coming your way this training camp as we count down towards Liberty's season opener. We're now in game month. It is August. It is August 1st. Liberty kicks off the season August 30th against Maine from Williams Stadium. Just wanted to share some thoughts, insights, comments, opinions on Liberty's start of training camp so far. Obviously, it's early. We haven't gotten a lot of details. We'll continue to get that each and every week as we get deeper into camp as far as who's standing out, maybe how some of these position battles are faring. But right now, it is, just kind of a lot of talk, right? As you know, especially with Coach Chadwell, his press conference on Wednesday prior to the first official camp practice, and then also from Media Day last week down in Texas for Conference USA Media Day. But, the main theme from Coach Chadwell has kind of been how this team has kind of been built in a different way, in the right way. Is a quote he said, talking about a togetherness, a camaraderie. And I think it's a lot of, things you can take away from that and also read between the lines of what he is and isn't saying. There's a few quotes that kind of stuck out from Wednesday in that regards. And obviously we covered it some last week from Media Day and wrote an article on a Seer Red about this. But that theme of togetherness and playing for each other, that was a huge theme in 2023 when Liberty went 13-0 in the regular season, including the conference championship game win in Conference USA before going to the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon. And it seemed like that level of, playing for each other was a big theme in 2023. And it seems like maybe last year was some fractures maybe from within, or maybe not everyone looking out for the team, but maybe worried more about themselves. Again, I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happened, but if you read between some of the lines of some of these quotes, maybe that's what Coach Chadwell thought, or is trying to make sure that doesn't happen if it did happen. So a couple quotes, just I'll read quickly. This is all from Coach Chadwell. There's a camaraderie that we're in this together, maybe not looking where they're going or where they've been or what's down the road, just enjoying the opportunity of being here. When you got another quote, when you got guys that want to be in the building, want to get better, other people want to do that. Talking about how people follow that strong leadership. Another quote from Chadwell, there's been a sense of gratitude. Anytime you have not an entitlement attitude, but an attitude of gratitude, I think good things happen that parlays hopefully into a lot of success. I think this team up to this point is built the right way. We're going to value the guys that give the extra effort more than the other stuff. These are all quotes from Coach Chadwell on Wednesday as Liberty was beginning to open training camp. And I think if you read between the lines a little bit there of what he's not saying, and talking about maybe how some things happened last year when there was some, negativity, some adversity, a loss at Kennesaw State, and the team kind of spiraled a little bit from that and weren't able to fully recover from some of that adversity. And, Coach Chadwell saying, it's been a point of his, important point for him since the end of last season to not have that happen again. And obviously, dealing with NIL and the transfer portal, it's a new landscape. So every coach, we saw it with Coach McKay and men's basketball, is trying to navigate how he would incorporate the transfer portal. And it took him a year or two to fully embrace it while still being able to keep that culture that he has. And that, resulted in a conference championship last year down in Huntsville, regular season and tournament for men's basketball behind Coach McKay. And now Coach Chadwell obviously had that success in 2023. He had success at Coastal Carolina before coming to Liberty. And maybe, handling that success from 23, the team, the coaching staff, the players didn't all handle it the right way, and still went 8-4 and started 5-0 and had a really strong start to the season before things kind of went sideways a little bit at the end. But Coach Chadwell's talking about wanting to make sure that that's not indicative of this team. Now, granted, these comments all came before the first day of training camp, before the first practice, before the pads have been put on, before, depth chart starts to shake out. And it's easy to be together when everybody's, 1A and 1B on the depth chart. But when that thing starts coming out and shaking out and you're running with the 2s and the 3s and you were hoping to be with the 1s, do you still, value that togetherness, that teamship, that we over me? So it'll be interesting to see, when adversity hits, does this team continue to stay together or does it fracture them? That always makes a good team. You look around the country from some of these opening comments from head coaches, they're always talking about, more important in what this team is doing, as far as doing things the right way, stacking days together. So we'll continue to monitor that. It'll be an interesting kind of side story to watch as the season goes on, and it may not be something we really have an answer for until you're midway or later part of the season. But it's just interesting. It's obviously, in my opinion, Coach Chadwell's saying the right things, and hopefully the team is buying into what he's been saying. So that's one of the big takeaways and been really the main prevailing theme kind of these past week or two of these talking points from Coach Chadwell. So, we'll obviously pay attention to that and see how that goes. Looking at some more, other items, other topics from training camp early on, quarterback battle. I've shared my opinion on that previously on the Sea Red podcast. Make sure you go back and watch that from this week if you haven't. We talked about the entire offense, broke it down, went in depth, position group by position group, kind of our expectations, question marks, and maybe strengths of that unit. We're going to be doing another podcast episode here in about a week and a half or so, looking at the defense. So obviously quarterback, that's the biggest storyline topic of camp, is that quarterback battle. It's, anytime you have a position battle at quarterback, it's always the most important battle. Whoever your quarterback is the most important. And Coach Chadwell said on Wednesday that all 5 guys are, in theory, technically still alive in this competition. He did say that, spring counts, right? Spring practice, those 15 practices that the team had in spring counts. Everybody's not starting from a level playing field. They've been graded to that point. They've also were graded throughout the summer, what they did in OTAs and workouts and other things, maybe film study and things like that. So, but he did say they're all 5 are technically still in the battle. He said 3 guys, the reps will be split pretty evenly as possible between 3 of those 5. Did not mention who those 3 were. But he said those reps would be even or pretty close to even through the first 9 practices of training camp, which concludes with a scrimmage, the team's first scrimmage of camp. And at that point, he hopes to narrow it down to those 3 or potentially to just 2 and do that for a week or so. And hopefully name a starting quarterback, at least internally, maybe not publicly, we'll see, but at least internally name a starting quarterback as you kind of, as classes start, as you kind of turn into that game prep mode for Maine towards the last half of this month. So who are those three may be your question, and that's a fair question. Again, media was allowed to watch, the first, so many minutes of practice on Wednesday. That's the only practice we've seen so far at this point. And during that time, which again was not the entire practice, but during that time, Ryan Berger and Ethan Vasco, the transfer from Coastal, were splitting reps with the ones. So it would make sense, and you would kind of expect those two to kind of be at the top of this pecking order, so to speak, entering camp. Obviously, Berger started the bowl game last year. He is a returner. He was second string behind Caden Salter last year, an App State transfer. He was App State's named their starter for the 2023 season before suffering an injury in their season opener that basically caused him to miss the rest of that year. And then Joey Aguilar took over for him, and there was no looking back there. So he entered the portal, and so Berger is firmly in the mix. Vasco was a starter at Coastal Carolina, and just because he came from Coastal Carolina, it's easy to say, oh, he's following Chadwell. He did not play for Coach Chadwell at Coastal Carolina, so he's not really familiar with this offense. It's a new offense to him. I mean, obviously some similarities, but he began his career at Kansas, then was at Coastal the last 2 years, while Chadwell's been at Liberty. So he was not at Coastal with or under Chadwell and Coach Willie Korn in this offense. So he came in January and had to learn the offense pretty much from scratch. But, he's got more playing experience than anybody else at the quarterback position at the FBS level, anybody else in the room. So those two make sense. Then it's kind of like who's number three. And again, while I was at practice on Wednesday, rotating with the twos pretty evenly was Jaden Bradford and Michael Merdinger, the North Carolina transfer, with Ethan Houck kind of, maybe being the fifth guy, just kind of observing, getting a few reps here and there. So my guess is it seems like it's either Merdinger or Bradford as the number three. I'm guessing it's Merdinger. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my guess. We'll continue to watch practice this coming week and listen and try to hear what we're gonna what people are going to say and what we're going to find out about that. That's kind of my guess, but it's one of those two I would assume based on what I saw on Wednesday. So it'll be interesting. Seems like those are kind of the leaders in the room now. We'll continue to watch that as we go through. Other positions, I mean, the rest of the offense, except for the tight end, you got Jacob Jenkins and Austin Henderson, kind of your top two there. But the rest of the offensive positions, there's question marks. Looking at running back, Vaughn Blue and Juju Gray were getting 100% of the work with the ones on Wednesday when we were there. That makes sense. I'd expect those two to kind of lead the way in that group. I do think there's room for either a Caden Williams or an Evan Dickens, the Georgia Tech transfer, which those two were working mainly with the twos on Wednesday, the practice, the part of practice that I was there for. So I do think there's room for at least one, if not both of them, to have a role in this offense. Juju Gray is more of that A back, the pitch back, the back used in space, the back used to catch passes out of the backfield. That kind of is more of his forte. I think you'll see him obviously run between the tackles. I'm not sure that's necessarily his strength. I could be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. Vaughn Blue kind of was that role last year as the A-back, the pitch back, the screen back. But he was working as primarily the B-back during practice. So he's a guy that Coach Chadwell's talked about throughout his career that he can play both. It could be something where when Juju gets a breather, maybe Vaughn Blue is the backup A-back, and then a Caden Williams comes in as that B-back. And, so it'll be interesting. I think, you'll have at least 3, maybe 4 if Dickens can work his way in. I think you'll have that many backs. It'd be more of a committee type approach than what we've seen in the last couple of years with Quentin Cooley getting the bulk of work, with Billy Lucas also in there. And last year was a lot of like, who's going to step into the Aaron Bedgood role? So we could see Juju kind of have a similar role to that. And you can have a Juju, / Aaron Bedgood, and then still have a Quentin Cooley, because you do use 2 running backs in this system. So, and you heard Coach Korn, he talked on Thursday about how you use, typically 4 running backs at a time. So there's room there. Also, Malachi Van Render, a true freshman who was here in the spring. Coaching staff talked highly about him. We'll see if he can work his way up the depth chart. So we'll be paying attention to that. Also, offensive line, wide receivers, some question marks there as far as who's going to emerge really at wide receiver to be your options 1 and 2. I think Casey Kane, the transfer from UNLV, previously at Texas, is probably the favorite for that. He had a strong spring game, a strong spring. We'll see how that develops. There's lots of names at the receiver group, though. Like, there's lots of names, and Liberty just needs at least 1 or 2 of those to kind of emerge. Could be a Reese Smith, a Casey Kane, an Elijah Canyon, a Tyson Mobley. There's lots of pieces there. We'll see how they kind of work in. Jamari Pearson's another guy, and Eric Smith, freshman last year that redshirted. The coaching staff's high on. So we'll just have to watch that. There's a lot of names there. Liberty needs 1 or 2 to kind of step forward. Offensive line is kind of similar. They've got a few proven parts. The first string offensive line on Wednesday, Aaron Fenimore at center. You had DJ Geth at left guard, Harrison Hayes at right guard, Jack Tucker at right tackle, Trey Badowski, the transfer from UAB, was at left tackle. I think those guys seem to be, I think they'll at least be in that mix of the top 7 or 8. There could be some movement in that depth chart as you get into camp further and further, because you got to remember there's several guys that came in the summer and weren't here in the spring. So they may be those guys, Christian Williams, a transfer from Florida. You also have the Wingate transfer, a JUCO transfer, transfer from Illinois. There's another one, Northwestern, Braden Edwards from Northwestern. Lots of guys at that offensive line group that came in the summer that kind of have the makeup of what you're looking for there, but they're probably a little bit behind just in terms of knowing the calls, knowing the playbook, knowing what they're supposed to do. Probably things are moving a little fast for them, I would imagine, but if they can catch on quickly, they can also push into that group, maybe even a first string type thing, but it might take them a couple weeks to fully get caught up to speed. So we'll continue to watch that. Those are some things on offense we're watching. One of the things that kind of stood out to me the most on Wednesday in Coach Chadwell's press conference was him. I use the term that comes to mind is gushing. That may be a little strong, but it seemed like he was gushing about the defense. Feel free to go back and watch his full press conference. It was around 15, 17 minutes. It's posted on the Yasir Red YouTube channel, and see what your thoughts were about his comments, Coach Chadwell's comments on the defense. He used words about the deepest this defense has ever been in his time at Liberty. He talked about it having the potential and the tools to be a dominating defense. And we got an article coming out, I think on Monday, about the defense, just kind of going into more depth on it. But it's 7 returning starters, a defense that's shown flashes over the past 2 years. That it could be a good defense, but then it would have lapses, whether that would be in a half or in a quarter or on a specific drive. So both Coach Chadwell and defense coordinator Kyle Krantz are talking about, you got to bring it every day. You got to bring it every practice. You got to bring it throughout. You got to be consistent with that level of pursuit of being great, of being a good defense. Joe Carter, linebacker, and one of the leaders there, was echoing some of those sentiments. He also met with the media this week. So Jarrell Farrar, an App State transfer, linebacker, came here in this summer. Coach Chadwell said, this is a name you're going to wonder where did he come from. So it's a name to watch there. Coach Chadwell talked about, he's been in this building, the Liberty Football Operations Center, more than I have, talking about this summer, doing film study and doing things to get better. So those are things you like to hear. So we'll certainly be watching the defense as well too. Can they take that next step and be more consistent for an entire game? And it may be, let's be honest, with so many question marks on the offense, it may be something that Liberty has to rely on the defense. Certainly in the first, few weeks of the season, maybe that first month of the season. And again, Liberty's got a tough schedule the first opening weeks, right? I mean, after Maine, you got the defending conference champions and Jack State on the road in Alabama with a noon kickoff. I mean, it's going to be hot down there September 6th. So the depth's going to be tested. And there's a lot of questions about the Gamecocks and how good they can be and how good they will be. And, Rich Rod's gone. They got a new head coach, a lot of new players, but they certainly have got some talent and they're capable of beating Liberty, and that'll be a key game. And then right after that, Liberty's got, Bowling Green, JMU, and ODU. And I've seen some predictions, you've probably seen them as well, where some have Liberty going 1-4 in the opening month of the season. So that would certainly be a disappointment. I don't expect that, but it's not going to be easy. So during that gauntlet, does Liberty have to rely on its defense while the offense is still, figuring things out, figuring out who should be in what spot and who should take what role and all that sort of stuff. And do you have, once a quarterback's name, it's maybe not 100% final decision. Like, does that quarterback, whoever's QB1, does he come in and have a strong start to the season? Does he turn the ball over? And maybe you have question marks going into week 2, week 3, week 4. Is this really our guy? Should we be looking over our shoulder into who's QB2? So, lots of things to watch for, and those are some of the things we're looking at and thinking about in training camp. It's an interesting training camp. It always is, especially now when you've got so many new faces, so many unknowns. People that have maybe done things elsewhere but haven't done it here at Liberty. So it's going to be fun to watch. Make sure you stay tuned to Seer Red. Try to bring these updates frequently throughout camp. Maybe not every week, but as frequently as possible. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this video, leave comments below if you got question marks, questions that you want answered. Leave them below, leave them on social media, and I'll try to answer them in a future video or in a future article on the website. All right, talk to you guys later.